Welcome to the Thriving Children Podcast, the show that helps parents and teachers to put the magic back in child development. Here's your host, Clare Crew.
This is episode 77 of the Thriving Children Podcast. I'm Clare Crew, and in this episode, I'm chatting with play therapist Renae Plueckhahn. Hi, Renae.
Hi, how you going?
Good. We've been emailing backwards and forwards for a few months, so it's really nice to have a proper conversation with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been thinking about this day for a long time.
That's right. So maybe we can start with the question I had to ask you a few months back. What is play therapy?
Yeah, I thought that's the question you might start with, and that's what everyone who meets me and other play therapists say. Well, what is that? And depending on who I'm talking to, it pretty much changes every time. So I've written something down because it can be a million different things and in different ways to say it. So play therapy is a developmentally appropriate intervention or prevention for children aged about 2 or 3 to 12 or 13, depending on the child. And the therapist, that uses their first and most natural language, which is play. And through their time in play therapy, children use toys as words and play as their language. They're able to play out their feelings, their thoughts and experiences in a safe and secure environment. They don't need words, and it's really, they bring to the session what they want to bring. It's about them. And the type of play therapy that I practice is child-centered. So they lead the whole session. They do what they feel they need to do or want to do throughout the session, and that's really up to them. So that's, in a basic way, that is what play therapy is.
And so I guess that's what it is for the child. That's kind of what it looks like at that bird's eye view. So as a play therapist, what is your role before a session, during a session, after a session? How does all of that look?
So as play therapists, we facilitate their play and their experiences and what they're going through tracking. We will basically tell the child what they're doing, which is why they don't need to communicate with us using language. We tell them what they're doing. We reflect their feelings, so we tell them how they're feeling. We reflect their content. So if they tell us a story, we show that we're listening by reflecting back what they tell us, and we basically give the child words, so they're showing us or they're telling us things, their experiences, and we give them their words back to them, and if we get that wrong, they say, you got that wrong. I'm not angry, I'm mad, and we accept that and we say, oh, I got that wrong, you're mad. So it's a real back and forth, and it's really about the relationship. So throughout the sessions, the relationship gets stronger, and the child is able to trust us more and can see that we're there and we hear them, we understand and we care, and that's basically what we want to show the child throughout their time with us in the playroom. Before sessions, we always have an intake with the parent or parents. It's best to have both parents there. And we talk about what their feelings and hopes are for the child, what's going on in their lives, what's maybe has happened or is going to happen in a prevention sense. And we keep that relationship going with the parents throughout. So we have another session, like a talk with the parents after about halfway, say session 6 or 10, and again at the end, and we really try and keep that communication open between us all, and then the sessions are mainly weekly, can be more than once a week, and last for as long as the child needs it, from anywhere from 10 to 30 to 40 sessions, depending on the child and what they've gone through and how they want to use their sessions.
So one thing that you touched on there is the playroom. What's the playroom like? And also, where is it? Is it in a clinic kind of setting, or are you guys in other types of environments as well?
So the playroom is a wondrous place, and is filled with purposefully selected toys that enable the child to express many range of emotions, but also, as we said, that play is their language and toys are their words. So we want them to have so many toys that are their words. We want them to be able to find their words very easily. And the playroom is set up in the same way every single session for every single child. So if they used the Play-Doh one session, it'll be in the exact same place the next session. So they'll easily be able to find their words and communicate how they're feeling through that play. So it can be, at the moment I'm in a school, so I've got a special little area that I have my mobile kit that I set up and pack up every single time I'm there. It can be in a clinic, it can be in we basically just need a room, and it can be really anywhere. You just need your toys, you need your child, and you need your therapist. So it's a really great medium of counselling because it can be done in many different places.
Yeah, including rural communities and in a lot of areas where maybe there aren't as many other services on offer.
Yeah, absolutely, and it can be done in an intensive model. So if you are need to go to a rural community, you can fly out for 2 weeks and do play therapy every single day for 2 weeks, so you'll do 10 sessions in 2 weeks rather than 10 sessions over 10 weeks. Mm-hmm. And it has the same effect. So the first session and the third session look the same, even if they're day 1 and day 3 or week 1 and week 3. So, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm actually doing 3 days a week at a school with the 3 same children. So I'm getting 20 sessions in one term instead of 10 sessions. If that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, so many questions I could dive into, but what children are good candidates for play therapy? Is it for everyone? Is it for children who have specific struggles?
Well, I believe I've seen it is for every child. While I've been practicing, I've used my own children that don't necessarily have any actual problems. I'm doing the air quotes problems, but it comes up things that I never thought that they were hanging on to, that they were thinking about. For example, one of my university, so I'm at uni, I didn't even mention that, doing my Masters of Play Therapy. So we had to video a session when we were, really learning the skills. And my daughter was 3 at the time. She had lost my engagement ring, and I gave it to her, and she lost it. And so for weeks and weeks, everyone asked her, "Where is it? Where is it?" And so this is probably a year later, and she's playing in the sand, and the character that the miniature woman that she's got, she's like saying to the other little baby, "Where's the ring? Where's the ring?" And looking through the sand for the ring, and the baby found the ring in the sand. So it was like this experience that had happened to her a year ago was in her head, and she resolved that within the play. She resolved the baby that she was playing with found the ring. So fascinating that it can be just any children that it can help.
Yeah.
But it can go further than that. I couldn't even think of anyone that it wouldn't help necessarily. You're thinking anxiety, depression, externalized behaviors, internalized behaviors, abuse, neglect. There's just so many different things that children go through, divorce and grief and loss. Even a loss of a pet can really affect a child, and play therapy can really help the child organise those thoughts in their mind and really play it out and work through it in their own time and in their own really gentle, loving way. There's no sit down and say, "Now, how are you feeling about that?" Because quite often they don't know how they're feeling and they don't have that language. And quite often when children are referred to us, parents or even themselves, they don't know what is wrong with the child or why they're behaving that way. And so quite often the play therapists never find out either, because the child just resolves those issues themselves which can be very, very hard for us. Sometimes we just never find out. And that's okay. Sometimes we just don't need to know, and they resolve it themselves.
And so I guess a key part of that is that you, as a play therapist, you're creating this very safe space with which children can play out those things in a variety of ways. Whereas I guess, some experiences, some emotions children will just play out in their everyday life. But I'm guessing as well that we have so many parameters around what kind of play is safe, what kind of play is acceptable, what kind of play we actually allow to unfold without interrupting, that's perhaps what makes play therapy a little bit more unique.
You're so right. We have aggressive toys, and we have more air quotes, girl toys and boy toys, and there are no rules where only the boys can play with the guns and the swords, and only the girls can play with the tiaras and the necklaces and the baby. So they realise quite quickly, I can play with any of these things without any kind of comment from an adult, and things like yelling and punching these. I've got a bop bag, which is like a big airfield bag of fun, or it can be fun, and they can go as hard as they want at this bop bag, and they can yell and they can scream, and believe it or not, they can swear, and it's really a place where they find the play therapist to be so different to every other adult in their world, because they can do basically what they need to do. And in saying that, we do what's called therapeutic limit setting, where we use the acronym ACT, which is we acknowledge the feeling, we communicate the limit, and then we target alternatives. So when I say they can do anything they want in the playroom, they can do most of the things they would like. They could play with all the toys in most of the ways they would like. That's what we tell the children at the start. And so when they do something or are about to do something that I deem unsafe, or unsafe to the child, or unsafe to me, or unsafe to the toys, I will let them know. I'll say, you really want to throw that ball at me, but I'm not for hurting. If you want, you can. I'm not for hurting. So that's the communicate the limit. Target the alternative. So I'll say, you can pretend the bop bag is me and throw it as hard as you want it there. And I'll use my emotions, I'll use my expression, and I'll show that I know how they're feeling. And then they've still got the ball in their hand, they usually turn and throw it as hard as they can at the bop bag. And that way they get that emotion out in a safe way.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Do you find, it makes perfect sense. Do you find that most children, when they're given that freedom, all of that potential anger or the swearing or whatever it is comes out straight away? Or does it take a lot of sessions, for all of that to start coming out?
It really depends on the child. I've had so many different children come through this year so far, and I've only started really in the last 2 terms of school doing my placement and then now my research. And the first session is always the same. It's always exploration. They want to play with every single toy because they do not know if they're coming back, and they do not know what is expected of them. They do not know how safe it is. And quite often, probably early on, they do try and see what their limits are, or see what my limits are. And then slowly they're like, I'm allowed to do that. And then they get a little bit more expressive and a little bit more loud and a little bit more aggressive and things like that. And I find that once that sort of they've experienced that and they've been able to do that, they might have a little bit of a kick and a bash of the bop bag, and then that's all they need for that day or for that session, and then they'll go and do their other type of play. Whereas I think if I said, no, that bop bag's there, but you are not allowed to kick it, not that I would speak that way, I'd feel like that they would be wanting to do that every single session because it's not allowed. So it's hard to explain, but yeah, I find that I expect them to go, especially the children that are referred for aggression, I expect them to be like that every single session, but I find that they're not. I find that they really are able to experience it and get it out of their system in a way, and then they find other ways to express themselves or find other things in the playroom that they feel like they need to do.
That is such a valuable experience for that child, but also a service that you're offering in that field, because there are so many children, even just in one school, there's so many children who have issues with aggression, with anger. There's perhaps a handful of children who are in the foster care system, who are going through divorce with their family, all those things you listed before. They're naturally anxious. All of those things are going on. So what I want to know, I guess, is it mainstream to send your child to a play therapist, or are you guys kind of on the outskirts still, and the common practice is a psychologist or someone from more of a specific mental health area?
Yeah, so in South Australia, I'm with APTA, which is the Australasian Pacific Play Therapy Association. So there are two associations, but that's the one that I'm a member of. And right now, there are no actual registered play therapist. I'm a student still, so and there's another student closer to Adelaide that is studying as well. So there's just us, and we're trying to. I'm the South Australian rep, so we're trying to get the word out there by doing things like this podcast, so that we are a first point of call. And I think that we can work with speeches and OTs and psychologists, and we can all do it together. So we're treating the whole child, not just a behaviour or not just one problem here and one problem there, the whole child, and communicate with each other. And because play therapy is such a gentle way to help children, you know, it can be just so effective for children that do not want to sit down and talk about their feelings and do not react well from people telling them what to do and things like that. So in places like Sydney and Melbourne and Darwin, play therapy is quite big, and there's even a charity in Sydney that you can get play therapy for free and to children in need. So it's a lot bigger in those places, and we hope for South Australia to follow in those footsteps and be so common that it's in every school or in every town. And I do think we'll get there, because uni at CDU in Darwin have play therapy degree now, and so does Deakin in Melbourne. So we will get there.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And I love hearing that, even though we're a bit behind here in Adelaide, that there are other states where it's more known, because, you know, as I said, you got in touch with me and I thought, what's play therapy? And I'm sure that there are so many families listening in, or educators as well, going, geez, that sounds like that might be a really great thing to try. How come the GP didn't refer us? Or how come, you know, none of the other mums at school had heard of this that could suggest it? That's where I love hearing as well that you're based in a school and that it's not restricted to clinic settings, because there are families who can't or won't get this kind of help for their children, but the schools would hugely benefit if all of the students, you know, have that treatment of them as a whole child first and foremost.
And it's I was really lucky at the school I'm at. It only took one teacher, and she's quite a new teacher, and she just embraced me and the whole play therapy thing, and she talked to the principal and she organised the children, and it just takes one teacher that is passionate about helping children in a different way, in a new way. If we had a play therapist as you can hire them as a counsellor, or you can use the schools can use their early years funding or the behaviour management funding and employ us. And it's evidence-based. There is so much research that shows that play therapy works for so many different problems. I hate that word, problems. But yeah, it's proven, and we just need to get it out there and get more people trained, and we could make a huge difference in all these children's lives, because as we know, children that don't work through their stuff as children work through it as adults, and it's a lot harder. Yeah,
or they never work through it and then they suppress everything, and then that is where I'll refer everyone back to Gerda's episode a few weeks ago about play deprivation and the people she works with in the prison system. So it's all going to either need to be dealt with at some point in our life, or it's just going to bubble out like a volcano and not be handled well.
Yep, and Gerda was at our play therapy conference, and she did a presentation. So she's totally on the play therapy bandwagon. So, yeah, I love Gerda.
Yeah, she's beautiful. She's beautiful. So I guess if we switch gears now, obviously there's play therapy, but then there's just the everyday play that our children do in preschools, perhaps in classrooms if they're given the scope to do so, in our homes as well. What tips or advice do you have for us as parents or as educators in playing with children? Because I'm guessing that you would also have some thoughts about how that is ideal and perhaps not ideal in evolving as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I've got 3 kids myself, and I have an early childhood education background. I had got my degree, 10 years ago. And so when I started this degree, I went in sort of thinking I knew what play therapy was, and then we went to our intensive in Darwin, and gosh, I got blown away. I'm like, oh no, I play with my children wrong. And of course there's no wrong way. But since then I've played with my children very differently and responded to them very differently. And my daughter now says to me, can you be play therapy mum? And then she'll say, no more play therapy mum, just be normal mum. So I don't expect anyone to always speak this way or be this way. So by letting the child lead, the play just goes in such a different direction, and it's a really hard thing to do. You sort of have to stop yourself when you are, just say, playing dolls and you've both got a doll, to not go, oh, we're going over here for a play, and then the child follows you. You sort of have to move around with your doll and wait for the child to come up with something, and that can be a really hard thing to do, especially without showing them that you're bored, to say. So you make, a lot of empathetic noises like, oh yeah, you do a lot of that, and you follow them around, and you might say, oh, we're going over here, and it's really about following your child's lead and not changing the play to suit you or to make it more interesting, or asking questions is another thing. As adults, we do that constantly. Oh, why are we doing this? Oh, what's that for? Or when they're painting, oh, what's that? Oh, it's about the end product a lot of the times with adults. And something that we do a bit differently is we never we do the encouragement versus praise. So we never say, oh, that is so good. We'll say, you tried so hard on that, or oh, you've put the blue there and the yellow there, and we'll really notice what they've done rather than the end product, and we don't evaluate it. So there's a few tips that make a huge difference, and the biggest one that I would give to teachers and parents is the reflecting feelings, which is what we do throughout the session, and is, I feel, one of the biggest impacts on children, because they come out with these feeling words that they may not have known was their feeling they were having. So things like, oh, that makes you really happy, or oh, you're so angry about that. And we really try and use the right affect as what they're doing. So, they might look confused, and we'll say, oh, you're confused about that, instead of saying, are you confused? Because we say, if you can ask a question, you've already got the answer, or you already know enough to assume. And so we use a lot of statements rather than questions. And there's some really little things that can make big differences.
Perfect. I love those. And I think the big point of difference there with the letting the child lead is you're active in that process still, as opposed to, okay, I'm just going to move my little doll or my car behind yours, and not really invest in the play. You need to do so, I guess, is what you're saying, but with them in the lead role, and you're really just adding little bits to reinforce what they're saying or the direction that they are leading everything.
Yep. And sometimes if your child's really not used to being in the lead, they'll sort of just wait for you to lead. So we use the whisper technique where we say, what do you want me to do? Did you hear that? I'm whispering there.
Yeah, I think so. I heard. I hope I heard.
You whisper like, what do you want me to do? And so it doesn't interrupt the play, and it doesn't lead the play, but then they go, oh, we're going over here. So they sort of, I guess at the start, they don't realise that, I'm in the lead. And, as I said, my child says to me, let's please be play therapy mum, because they just they love being in the lead, and it's something that they don't get very often.
Yeah, very sadly. And I guess that's the case because we adultify things so much. But also, you know, if you are the younger of a few siblings, then that also might mean that even if you've got lots of time playing with your siblings without adult interruption or without adult intervention and the adult agenda, you still perhaps never really get that chance to be the leader in play.
Absolutely. And the other thing that play therapists quite often do is what's called child-parent relationship therapy, CPRT, where it's like a parenting course where it's about 10 weeks, and we bring parents in and we teach parents the skills that play therapists use, and then for 10 sessions they go home and do the play therapy session with their child. So they've already got that relationship there, and it has amazing results, even compared to child-centered play therapy, which is what I practice. So there's that too, and so they learn the reflecting of feelings and the reflecting of content and the limit setting, and so that relationship is strengthened, and it has long-lasting effects. So that's another thing that we do.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I guess too, then that probably just becomes a part of who you are as a parent. You know, while you might not be play therapy mum all the time, some of those lessons that you've gained from that, especially if it's quite a different style of doing things than how you have been parenting, it might give you a few light bulb moments to go, it is good to give my child the freedom to play in the way that they want to, and so on and so forth.
And one of the biggest changes in my daughter is 6, and she's quite highly emotional, and it's just her. And I've always wanted her to get this confidence. And one thing I learnt was the praise versus encouragement. So we try encourage and not praise. So after doing that for a few weeks, she got it, and she goes, "Mum, this is my picture, but it doesn't matter what you think as long as I'm proud of myself." And that's what we want children. We want them to do it. So their internal locus of control versus their external locus of control. So we want them to want it for themselves, not want it for other people. And I think that's what we're really steering children into, the external locus of control, especially at school, where it's an end product rather than a process. And, the teacher has to be happy with it, or you're doing a drawing for mum, or you're doing a drawing because a teacher told you to draw a person, not about what you want to do. So it's about, the real internal stuff, which, as you know, it's forever, and something that children miss out on a bit, I think, nowadays.
Yeah, I think, we're creating a society of people pleasers, but also it can be so damaging to children's self-esteem when they do something that they think is amazing because, that process was incredibly fulfilling, and then we have our adult judgment and go, no. And most educators won't do it so awfully as this, but I've heard quite recently of a teacher scrunching up children's drawings because it wasn't good enough or it didn't quite meet the criteria that was set at the start of the lesson. And that's kind of the opposite of what we want to be fostering in young children, that sense of spirit and that can-do attitude.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd just love to hear a teacher say, instead of go, "Oh, that's so good," say, "Oh, you've put that up there, or you've went around there, or you've used all the colours." That's something that I haven't heard. And I would just love, rather than evaluating it, just go, not evaluating it, but showing that you saw their process and that you care about what they've done rather than what they've created. I'm not sure how that works, but yes.
It's quite easy to do. I think it is quite an early childhood thing, actually. I think that, we are big on the process, not the product. But I think sometimes, educators that come from a different line of training might not think that way. Or even, for us early childhood educators, sometimes that gets drummed out of us. And we do become, especially in the school system, more focused on that end product because that's what we're having to report against. That sometimes we're not taking the extra bit of time to see the magic of that thinking that's going on behind the scenes.
Yep, absolutely. And as early childhood educators, having early childhood as a undergrad, me and another friend who has the same degree and is now doing her master's as well, our point of view with this play therapy stuff is so different to anyone, just say OT undergrad or a psychology undergrad. Our viewpoint is so different because, gosh, our whole degree was about child development and about making sure children aren't overstimulated in a playroom. So, none of this bright colours, plastic stuff everywhere. Me and Courtney are very calm colours and everything nice and birch and white and things like that. So, we're really lucky that we have that background.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. It's There's still some stuff I'd change in that degree if I could. There was a lot of good there too.
Yep, absolutely. Yes.
So if, Renae, we want to learn more about play therapy, or perhaps you specifically, where can we go?
So we have our association, which is APTA. So we can put the website in the comments, can we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yep. So that's if you want to find play therapists in your state, in your area, and it can be a little bit hard to find. So I'm really happy for people to email me at my email address, and I've got quite a few connections in all the different states, so I can see if there's a play therapist that can help you. Even a student that needs to do their placement, they're always looking for schools and things like that to work for free, which is always good for everybody.
Absolutely.
And their research. So because it's a master's degree, we all have to do a thesis. So there's a lot coming out now. Otherwise, there's Facebook. There's a lot of play therapists that have Facebook pages that you can get lots of lovely quotes on and things like that. So there's B Centre in Sydney, and I follow their page and get a lot of wonderful inspiration from them. And Play Therapy Circle, that's that is the Darwin Play Therapy course. That's their page. So some great things on there as well. So there's 2 options for you, but it's not huge, to Google there is a great YouTube TEDx talk by my lecturer Joe Wicks, so if you watch that, that will blow your mind. So that's another link for you.
That was pretty good. I did watch that. And
you watched it?
I did watch it. I did watch it. I'm curious about what your research paper's on.
So I'm doing the effect of child-centered play therapy on externalized behaviours in the classroom.
So maybe when are you going to be finished?
Based.
When are you going to be finished?
I finish next week. So I'm doing finish next week. So then I've got another term to write it up.
Okay. Well, when you're done, maybe you can come on and share your research findings with us.
Oh, definitely will. Well, I've got no doubt they're promising. I've seen huge changes in the children already, and I haven't talked to the teacher. So we did a pre-interview with the teacher and it's an SDQ that she filled out a form about them, and I'm trying not to talk to her because I don't want to get my hopes up that it's going to work, but I know it will because the research is already there hugely in America. It's really big in Texas mainly, and they've got the Centre for Play Therapy there, and it's just really big. I want to go there one day. So I thought when I was thinking about what am I going to do, I thought when I was a teacher, what was the thing that was the hardest? And it was those externalized behaviours, those children that would yell out and even run away and fight and hurt other children and all those kind of things that I thought, if you could just help those children, your classroom would run a lot smoother. Mm-hmm. So that's why I decided to do that. But yes, I'll come and talk if the research results are really good.
So if Renae never returns to the podcast, we know the results weren't good.
Yeah. And I am planning to open my own private practice in Gawler.
Which is close to me. So that's very exciting. I'm sure we'll have to have a coffee here or there to check in with each other. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Renae. It's been wonderful to hear about this world of play therapy and also to learn a bit more specifically about what you do.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been great getting the word out there. It won't be the end.
So that is the end of this episode of the Thriving Children podcast. Until next time, be kind to yourself.
Thanks for listening to the Thriving Children podcast. For even more goodness, visit thrivingchildren.com.au.